Hi, and welcome to our webcast for April 29, 2016. My name is Christian Debré, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disability. Today's topics, only one. Proposed amendment to Bill C-14. The proposed amendment to Bill 14, and this is Amy Asbrook who will speak about it.
Okay then. So this is going to be a little bit different. What we're going to do is explain a little bit what the amendment is and why we're proposing it, and then we'll give you the actual amendment. And sometimes it doesn't quite make a lot of sense because it's out of the context of the statute, but we'll try to explain what it means.
And it could be a little bit complex because it's a part of a law that
Right.
we try to modify.
Right, exactly. Bill C-14 is headed to the Justice Committee for hearings. Those are going to be happening next week, and the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition has been invited to testify, and I'll be testifying as one of the people on their behalf. So I'll be testifying
Plus or minus 4
Tuesday.
minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet has prepared a set of amendments to try to address some of the problems with Bill C-14 that we described last week. We will be looking for members of Parliament and senators to introduce these amendments in hopes that the final bill will include as many of them as possible. And we're setting up meetings next week. We already have one set up in Ottawa with our member of Parliament, and we're going to be setting other meetings up with members and senators to try to get them to sponsor these amendments and to vote for them as well.
And most are directly in to advance the law for the goods of everybody.
Right, exactly. Okay. The first has to do with a section called Reasonable but Mistaken Belief. The law provides exemptions for errors made by healthcare providers and ordinary citizens relative to assisted suicide and euthanasia that could result in negligent or culpable homicides, but for this blanket exemption. The amendment we're proposing is to remove sections 227.3 and 241.6. exemptions for reasonable but mistaken beliefs. So we're suggesting that they just take that out, because if people make a mistake about any fact that has to do with the assisted suicide, even that the person wanted it, and they go ahead and do something like give assisted suicide,
If it's a mistake,
that's a kind of wide open
yeah. But if it's a mistake, there is an easy defense. I was believing that it's warranted, so he will not be sued without this law.
Right.
And if you allow this law, you clear everybody. So even if somebody wants to kill somebody, you just have to say, "Oh, I was thinking you want to be killed," and that's it. He's free from any suing possible. So it's a big opening over killing people legally.
Right.
Legalizing murder, which is not what we want.
Right, exactly. It just leaves a hole that's way too wide open for people to do bad things and get away with it.
Everybody knows what a bad placed a coma could do over a law with a good lawyers.
Right, a comma, yeah.
Yeah.
The law allows an exemption for any person, quote, if they do anything for the purpose of aiding a medical practitioner, unquote, to provide assisted suicide or euthanasia. These provisions are unnecessary and dangerous and should be removed. Our proposed amendment is to remove sections 227.2 and 241.3. So those are there are actually two sections that have that proposal, that anybody who's says they're helping a medical practitioner. So that could just be the préposé, slipping into French, the aide on the floor who decides, well, this person is thinking about having assisted suicide. I'll just put this pillow over their head and that'll be their assisted suicide. And again, this section would exempt them from any kind of problems. And we think that's too big an opening. So we think that that section should just be removed. The exemption for persons aiding a patient allows a layperson to do anything to help the patient self-administer a lethal dose. This is unnecessary and dangerous. The section should be removed, and our amendment is to remove section 241.5. And again, this is a section that this is the idea is when the person takes the drug home, that any person, any member of the family who
Even a stranger.
even a stranger who comes in off the street could do anything, including holding a pillow over somebody's head.
Yeah, or shoot him or whatever.
Right. And, you know, to aid in their assisted suicide.
It's kind of exaggerating.
Right. Especially if it is accompanied by that other section that we talked about, the reasonable but erroneous.
Even if you use a bomb to blow out the house,
Well,
you will be accused of blowing the house, not killing the guy.
Right. Don't exaggerate.
Yeah, but it's kind of.
Wait. Okay. Section 241.21D refers to voluntary requests for assisted suicide. By excluding only, quote, external pressure, unquote, this section is too narrow, meaning that it only excludes if somebody's being pressured, like by their nephew to, come on, uncle, you know, you've lived long enough, why don't you go for that assisted suicide?
Only that.
Right.
But there is a lot more
Reasons.
kind of pressure that you could suffer.
Right. It should be amended to include the Supreme Court standard of, quote, vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide in a time of weakness, unquote.
That's what the court says.
Right. That was in the Carter decision.
Yeah. So we say the court do that, say that, so put it in the law.
Right, exactly. So our proposed amendment is in section 241.21D. After the word pressure, add the phrase, nor is the result of circumstances that render him vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide. We think this is pretty straightforward and pretty uncontroversial, but we'll see. We're not sure if they'll accept it. So
even something who's looked like very evident, sometimes it's not put it in the law. It's not
Right.
put in the law.
right. In the safeguard section, additional safeguards are necessary to ensure effective communication for people with communication disabilities, and that persons who are potentially vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide in a time of weakness are not wrongly directed to medical aid in dying.
So even people who are for this law and want to expand it, this is working both ways.
Right. They should also want people to have access to communication so that the person can communicate clearly and understand what the doctor and the nurse are saying to them. So the access to communication section goes as follows. Access to effective communication in life or death matters is essential to people with communication and sensory disabilities and is a right as well. And so our proposed amendment is in section 241.23, insert new section A that says, provide access to written and oral communication in all interactions between medical practitioners or nurse practitioners and the person making the request who has a sensory or communication disability. Access shall be provided by impartial professional interpreters, speech-language pathologists, scribes, and/or assistive technology to achieve effective communication. And the key word here is effective communication.
Yeah.
Because if you're just writing notes back and forth, that's not effective when you're talking life or death matters. There's not enough information that can be passed back, notes back and forth between a deaf person and a hearing person. So those are important provisions.
Yeah, it's vital. It's not, it's even more than important.
Right. And again, it works positive for both, for people who want this law to be a success as well. So everybody should support this
So
amendment.
normally it should be included easily, but you will see.
We'll see. The second section under safeguards is that the person meets eligibility criteria. Section A, C, and F of 241.21.
Yeah, it's very technical, you know, paragraph, subparagraph, and
right, exactly.
so on, so on. It's very, very technical.
Subsections A, C, and F create subjective standards where objective standards would be preferable.
Yes, objectivity is always better than subjectivity.
Right. So our proposed amendment is that section 241.23A 3A should be changed by replacing the phrase "be of the opinion" with the word "verify." Similarly, the phrase "be satisfied" in subsections C and F should be replaced with the word "verify." And this is talking about when the doctor is making, the person who's making the eligibility determination is deciding whether the person's eligible. And so it should be, rather than this person's opinion, they need to verify that the person has grievous and irremediable medical condition. They need to verify that the person signed the request, not just that they be of the opinion. These all need to be verified as an objective standard. Informed consent, another section in the safeguards. The information provided in section 241.23b2 is insufficient to ensure informed consent. And the information that's provided in that section is that the person has a particular illness or irremediable illness, and that they are reasonably expected to die within a certain period. We want to amend that section to add more information. So in that section, add the word, after the word circumstance, add the medical practitioner or nurse practitioner must ensure that the person is informed of and understands the methods and potential complications of medical aid in dying, the availability of palliative care and other alternative treatments and supports.
Yeah, very important, because now a lot of time the doctor just said, you will die soon, so do you want to be killed?
Right.
And that's not enough. Okay?
Right.
And there is many options possible.
There's a lot of confusion about what medical aid in dying is. So we want people to be clearly informed that medical aid in dying is not the same thing as palliative care.
Not at all.
And that medical aid in dying means that you're dead. And that they do have the right to palliative care.
And one thing which is certain is doctors are not very good to predict the hour of death of people. Sometimes there's many people who receive a certain death prognostic and is still living now after a few years.
Right, exactly. All right, in the safeguard section again, the written opinion confirming the person's eligibility. The language of section 241.23e does not stipulate that the second medical practitioner or nurse practitioner must give a physical examination to the person making the request for medical assistance in dying. So our proposed amendment is that in section 241.23E, after the word has, add the phrase physically examined the person making the request.
It's kind of logic. You ask a second opinion, and the second doctor could be far away. Let's say if you live in Montreal and it's a guy in Vancouver, a doctor in Vancouver, to say, okay, looks like on the TV, great, kill him. Okay.
Or even just that the doctor would look at a medical record rather than examining the person, talking to the person.
So you should examine the person to make sure, at least reasonably sure, because medicine is not a very precise science.
Right, and remember that this law does not mandate that even one doctor make an examination. It could be two nurse practitioners who examine the person and make the determination that they're eligible for medical aid in dying.
So at least they have to see the patient. It's
Right.
a minimum of minimum.
Right, exactly. Still in the safeguard section, the prior vulnerability assessment and prior palliative care assessment. In order to determine that a person is or is not vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide in a time of weakness, which is the standard we talked about, an assessment of that person's vulnerability must be conducted, and any vulnerabilities must be addressed before the person can be eligible for medical assistance in dying. Doesn't that sound logical? Yeah.
Yes, it sounds logical. At least
Right.
for anybody who think right.
Right, well, yeah.
That's a minimum.
Right, so the amendment we are proposing is to section 241.23 to insert the following after letter F. Letter G, ensure that the person has a psychosocial assessment to determine any vulnerability to inducement to commit suicide at a time of weakness, address any such vulnerabilities that are identified to ensure that the request is completely voluntary.
Okay, it's looked like a little bit more complicated, but that's not being so difficult. The person who have to verify it have to ask few questions to few people, one witness or something like that, to make sure that there's not obvious pressure over this patient.
Right, and
Okay.
that the circumstances that the person is living in are not causing the person to want to die.
Yes.
So if
Okay.
the person's living in a nursing home and the quality of life is very bad in that nursing home because the food is terrible and he doesn't get taken care of very well, that makes that person vulnerable.
What does it say? It's not we need a full inquiry with a lot of people. It's a basic question who have to be taken care of by a group of people who have to be asked and verified. That's
Right.
it.
Right, exactly. And we will also want to insert letter H after that says, ensure that the person has consulted with a palliative care professional and received all appropriate palliative care services.
Yeah, that's a minimum too. Did you have been taken care of?
Right,
Okay.
right.
If it said no, maybe you doesn't want to die. Okay. If it said yes, you was trying to have palliative care and not like it, okay,
Right.
you may want to die.
And again, this is for a law that guarantees the right to medical aid in dying, but doesn't guarantee the right to palliative care. We're trying to change that. We're trying to make it so that
Yes.
everybody gets palliative care.
Yeah, universal and accessible.
Right.
That's what we need. And afterward, if somebody want to die, okay, you want to die.
Right, exactly. The next section is prior judicial review. This is an indispensable safeguard to ensure compliance with legislated requirements and to identify and address vulnerability before the life-ending act has taken place.
That's what is needed before you die.
Right.
Because if you are already died and say, oh, we shouldn't do.
Right, because
Okay.
otherwise it's just a doctor or a nurse looking at the request, doing an exam, making the decision that you're eligible, and administering the lethal dose. There needs to be another person who comes in and looks at this situation to make sure that the request is really voluntary, to make sure that the person is really capable of making a request. So that's why we're saying there needs to be prior judicial review. So
Yeah.
the amendment we're proposing is to insert a new section following section 241.23, which that reads, each request must be submitted to the Superior Court in the jurisdiction in question for an expedited review to verify the determination that A, the person meets the eligibility criteria for medical assistance in dying. B, the person has a grievous and irremediable medical condition. C, the person has been informed of his diagnosis, prognosis, including that his natural death is reasonably foreseeable, and of the availability of alternative treatments and supports, that includes palliative care. That the person has access to communication assistance and professional impartial interpreter services for effective communication. E, that the person has made a voluntary request and is not subject to external pressure or other circumstances that render the person vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide. F, the person is capable of making medical decisions free of the effects of depression, drug effects, demoralization, cognitive limitations, or other conditions that may affect mood, insight, or judgment. G, the person has been given access to palliative care and other services to alleviate his suffering. And H, the person has a settled, unambivalent wish to avail himself of medical assistance in dying.
All those things we have already talked about it.
Right. Those are all supposed to be conditions, but we're just putting them right out front, saying that a judge needs to look at all the paperwork and make sure all those things are taken care of, because the other side wants them too.
And the judge already done this kind of job right now,
Right.
and it may continue like that, or they could create an administrative tribunal or a group of judge, specialized judge. There's many ways to do that.
Right.
Okay, and it is supposed to be for very few people a year. Okay,
Right.
that's how they tell us that
The people who are supporting assisted suicide say it's only supposed to be for a very small number of people.
very, very small, which we are not thinking it will happen. It will be for large people, and it will enlarge every year. That's what's happening in Oregon and Belgium and other countries. And we think that we're better than them. I don't think we are better than them, so it will happen here too. And it's what we doesn't want to see.
Right, exactly. But unlike those other countries, we want to do this a little better. We want to make sure that somebody outside of the process is looking it over. And the other thing that's important about doing that is that creates a record of what happened. And so it makes it easier to study the effects of the program. So it's not just the doctor reporting on what he or she did. It's the judge. It's a court record that shows that the judge approved the medical aid in dying.
A judge or whatever people, the government decide.
Right.
But an independent people.
Right, exactly. The next section is called Unable to Sign. There is currently no restriction on who may write and sign the application form on behalf of a person who cannot fill out the form himself. Thus, an heir or employee of a nursing home could fill out the application for a person who has a communication disability, and their interpretation of the person's wishes would probably go unchallenged. So the amendment we're proposing is in section 241.24, following the word behalf, replace the period with a comma and add except if they.
There is many
Hold
people.
on.
Yeah, sorry.
Except if the third person knows or believes that they are a beneficiary under the will of the person making the request or a recipient of any other way of a financial or other material benefit resulting from the person's death. B, are an owner or operator of any healthcare facility in which the person making the request is being treated or any facility in which the person resides. C, are directly involved in providing healthcare services to the person making the request. Or D, directly provide personal care to the person making the request.
All those part of amendment have the target to make sure that nobody who have interest to kill somebody faster have the right to do the form.
Right.
That's what the target is. Because there are many ways who could happen. Let's say an employee of a long-term care have trouble with, let's say, one guy like me who shit too much in his diaper, and it think it's too much job. So maybe if I kill him faster, I will not have to care anymore to this guy. That's one way to have legally. It's when you kill somebody, you have the
homicide.
Yeah, what is an homicide? You have, yeah, it's a murder, but that's the name. But you have to have a motivation. Okay, you have to have motivation too. This is a motivation, and somebody may do it. It's already happening in long-term care things.
We talked a couple of weeks ago about how sometimes staff put a do not resuscitate order on people's charts.
It's already happening.
Right. So what happens if somebody fills out a form on behalf of somebody who is in a nursing home? You know, we always think, well, it can't happen here. People don't do that kind of thing.
But it's happening.
If you can imagine it, it will happen. Yeah. So that's what we're worried about.
Remember that any kind of society, a small one, let's say doctors or policemen or whatever, have 3 to 4% of delinquent people.
Yeah.
Delinquent people in it. So it's the same in those kind of house and doctors and any kind of society.
Right, exactly. The next section is called conscience protection. Well, the preamble of Bill C-14 mentions, quote, respect for the personal convictions of healthcare providers, unquote. There is nothing in the statute to protect conscience rights of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, or others. So the amendment we are proposing would insert the following after section 241.27. Section 8, freedom of conscience. A, no medical practitioner, nurse practitioner, pharmacist, or other healthcare provider who objects to medical assistance in dying due to personal conviction shall be compelled to participate in any aspect of the medical assistance in dying program.
You want to be forced to kill somebody.
Right.
Nobody wants to be
Nobody wants to be compelled to participate.
Yeah. Right. But some will do.
Right. There are people who will do this, and it's not everybody, but there are some people who just don't want to participate, and they should be allowed not to. Section B, hospices which operate on the principles of palliative care to neither delay nor accelerate natural death may elect not to participate in the medical assistance in dying program.
This one is important too, because those kind of house, if you do that, you kill them. They will not exist anymore because this is their target.
Right.
Not neither accelerate or decelerate the death of somebody.
Right.
Okay?
That is a basic principle of palliative care. And if you take away their ability to,
There's no palliative care possible.
right, be that way, then also that means there's no safe place for a person who, you know,
Want to be protected against himself.
assisted suicide and euthanasia.
Because there is people like that who are conscious that they doesn't want it, but at the same time they feel that they could ask it and they doesn't want to be permitted to do that.
Right.
So they want to have some safe place. If it doesn't exist, it became something very nasty for people.
Right, right, exactly. And finally, religious institutions are exempt from participation in medical assistance in dying program. That's another amendment that we're proposing.
Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, all doesn't want to do that.
Well, yeah, there are lots of institutions run by religious organizations that do not want to participate, and they should not be forced to do that. Okay, the next section is regulations. And regulations require reporting on each case with obligations for the provinces to gather and report on reasons for the request, options considered, the decision, and ultimate disposition. The federal government should require each province to complete these reports as a prerequisite for transfer of funds through the Health Act. The federal government must table an annual report in Parliament. This is left too uncertain in Bill C-14 and should be specified. So the amendment we are proposing is to a section that says the federal government may make regulations, and we are saying to replace the word may in the first sentence with the word shall.
Okay, this one may be complicated, okay, because it's including somewhere a fighting over constitution. But political must try to do something about it because it's a matter of life or death of somebody.
Right.
Okay, so whatever the way they do that, it must be ruled a kind of that way.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the idea is already thought of that the federal government is going to suggest regulations, but we think the government must make regulations that the provinces would have to follow.
And they have to speak together to do the best for people, whatever people it is, Canadian or Quebecer, or British Columbia people, or anything.
Right. It would be unrealistic to expect that all or even many of these amendments will be adopted, but any improvement in the law could save lives. So
yes, it is.
That's our last thought. In order to view our videos, go to the
that was our
presentation.
So it is finished. Now we will introduce you to our communication data.
If you want to view our videos, you can go to YouTube or a search engine and search for the words euthanasia and disability, and you'll find our videos. To participate live, send me your email address and I'll send you a link to join us live. And that will arrive about 15 minutes before the podcast or webcast starts. And you can send your email address to me at info@tv-ndy.ca. For more information on the subjects we discuss here, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujourdsvivant, not dead yet, all one word. Visit our website at tvndy.ca. Email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or follow us on Twitter @tvndy. And if you want to be on our mailing list to receive the hard copy of our presentation, just send us an email and I can put you on our email list. Thanks for Christian to help
Thank you,
for
Amy.
helping us out, and thanks for being here. Please join us again next time.
See you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.